How do you interact with people you don't know? Right? I think knowing how to talk to people is an extremely important skill. And it's something that we all should be able to do. And it's something that we all can work on. Right? We love to use those terms introvert and extrovert. And I would agree, right, when it comes to people being more introverted or more extroverted. But I'd say it's more of a spectrum than it is a strict classification of one or the other. I think we're introverts in certain situations and we're extroverts in others, right? We're not strictly introverts and we're not strictly extroverts, right? There are people who are very quiet and you bring up something and you see their faces light up and they're all of a sudden the most talkative people in the world, right? So I think it's a spectrum when it comes to this. And so what I'm trying to say is don't put yourself in a box, right? Your ability to talk and interact with people is something that you can improve upon, just like any other skill. If you want to get better at soccer, you got to practice, right? You got to do drills, you got to train. Treat interacting with people in the same way, right? If you want to get better at interacting and talking to people, then you have to talk to people more so that you get more comfortable with it. I would consider myself to be a more introverted person, and yet I can still know how to talk to people and be willing to talk to people as well that I don't know, right? So obviously this is a skill that I'm working on actively, and so I obviously have not reached the end of the journey, and I think there's always stuff to improve upon and stuff to learn in this regard. So what are some tips for interacting with people, right? First of all, don't put yourself in a box. View this as something that you can improve upon. If you struggle to talk to people, it's okay. You can improve upon this skill by talking to more people. So obviously the first piece of advice, put yourself out there. Now, what are some practical ways to put yourself out there? The simplest way, right, is to go to places where you can interact with people, right? And where interacting with people is sort of encouraged, right? If you're in college, right, it's pretty there's so many events in college. There's like an event every week in college. So there's so many social events, social situations you can put yourself in college to interact with other people, right? So the first step obviously is to get experience, right? This isn't like a test that you study for and then you go there and you take it. No, this is something that you have to gain through experience. That's the only way to get better at this. And so put yourself in situations where you can talk to people, right? A person in college, join a club, go to a club interest meeting, and try and talk to people that you don't know. Go to a social event, right? For adults, go to social events. There's social apps on there, right? You can find social events in your area, right? For people in high school, it's not as important in high school. Probably something you'll develop more when you're older, but better to develop it earlier on. You can join a club as well. Join a club. Again, in high school, I think it's a bit more difficult, but you can join a club or again, go to social events that are happening, right? Maybe you can join youth group, your church's youth group. That's an opportunity, right? There are different ways to do it. So put yourself in a situation where you can talk to people you don't know. Number one. Number two, when it comes to interacting with people, I think the hardest thing is the approach. So, how do I talk to a person that I don't know anything about? So, I see a person that I'm interested in, or a person that I want to talk to, whether it be someone of the opposite sex or same sex. How do I approach the interaction? I think the best way, what I've found, is to find an angle, right? So, what do I mean by find an angle? Find a place to begin the interaction, right? A place to begin the interaction that seems natural, right? So, for example, say someone has, I have this shirt on, right? This Tiny Toons shirt. And so someone can begin the interaction perhaps if they want to talk to me and they don't know me by saying, "Hey, that's a nice shirt. Where'd you get it from?" Then maybe I can say, "Are you into cartoons?" Right? And the interaction builds from there. So, probably one of the biggest hints or one of the biggest pieces of advice that I have is to find a place to start the interaction from so that it seems natural, right? The worst thing that can happen, in my opinion, with these interactions is that they just become an exchange of information. Hey, what's your name? Hey, are you a freshman? Hey, what's your major? And it just becomes a back and forth exchange of information. So don't necessarily default to the basic questions. Now, obviously, you want to ask some baseline questions to get an idea of who you're speaking to, right? But at the same time, you don't want to You don't want the conversation to devolve into an exchange of information. You want the conversation to be substantive and entertaining, right? That makes it easier for the conversation to flow, right? And so you can start off, I think, with some baseline questions. Obviously, what's your name is an easy one, right? For people in college, maybe what's your name? What's your major, right? Those are maybe some basic ones, but try and cut it short there and maybe ask some questions that lead to more interesting or drawn out responses. If you ask a person what their major is, ask them what they want to do, why they want to do it, right? Maybe ask if they have siblings who do a similar thing, or ask what their parents do. That can lead to a longer, more substantive answer. And you get to find out more about them in a less robotic way, right? Another thing too, what are your hobbies? That's an easy one. That's a very easy one. What are your hobbies? Because people's hobbies typically, well, not typically, but I'd say most of the time when you're talking to a person you don't know and you ask them what their hobbies are, chances are you have a similar hobby or the same hobbies, or you have some hobbies that intersect, right? So they have some hobbies, you have some hobbies, some of them intersect, right? And so you guys can bond or you guys can connect on that as well. Especially if you find someone who has a niche hobby, right? A niche hobby, and you as well have that niche hobby, perfect. That's a gold mine for interaction. So ask questions that lead to substantive or more drawn out answers, right? That give them an opportunity to express themselves, right? And that give you an opportunity to sort of chime in, find an angle to attack from, right? So a place to start the interaction so that it seems natural. Time and place as well, right? Know some places sometimes when it's not really appropriate to have a conversation that's drawn out or long, and places when it is, right? Or situations when it is appropriate to have a longer conversation with a person. Know these things, right? Unfortunately, they're unspoken, but for most people, you should know, right? Times and places to have these types of interactions with people, right? The hardest thing is the willingness to approach people. Social interactions are very interesting because when we're talking to a person at least that we don't know, and we're the one who initiates the interaction, we're really essentially putting ourselves at that person's mercy. Will the person entertain the conversation? Will the person reciprocate? Is the person interested? And at the end of the day, the people you're talking to don't have to be interested, right? At the end of the day, you don't know what a person is going through, right? So when you talk to them, bear that in mind, right? If a person's being dry or boring, try and give them the benefit of the doubt. And at the end of the day, you are the person who's going up and talking to them. Maybe they're having a bad day. You never know what's going on. So give people the benefit of the doubt when you're going up to them or when you're talking to them for the first time, because you don't know what's happening in their lives or what's happened to them. And so they might be a little dry or whatever. Don't take it personally, right? You're the one who initiates the interaction. Sometimes people don't want to talk to other people. They have a right to feel that way, right? They have a right to be that way. Now, that doesn't mean they should be rude, but they have a right to not want to interact with people. It's the same to me. There's some times where I don't really want to talk to people. That's perfectly fine. And so bear that in mind, that when you go up to a person and talk to them, you are at their mercy essentially. And hopefully they reciprocate and hopefully they make for an interesting conversation so that you guys maybe can get to know each other more, or maybe you guys can just have a conversation and leave it off at that, right? Not every conversation will lead to something super deep or substantive, right? Not every person you go up to is going to become your best friend. That's fine. Appreciate that as well. Understand that there's a value in just having conversations and talking to people, even if they don't go beyond that, right? Understand that everyone has a story to tell, right? And so, again, like I said, really, I think that's a big one, right? Not every interaction will lead to something maybe substantive. You guys might not become best friends, right? You guys might not even communicate after an interaction like that. You guys might exchange instas, right? A very common practice, but it might not lead to anything. Get comfortable with that. Get comfortable with that. It's a numbers game, right? A good friend of my brother's said it's a numbers game, right? When it comes to interacting with people. So go out there and interact with people. See which ones hit, see which ones miss. But bottom line, no matter how they go, you will become more comfortable in interacting with people and you'll be more willing to do it, right? I think this is an invaluable skill because it goes beyond just friendships. When it comes to job opportunities, internships, things like that, soft skills are extremely important. So this goes beyond just socially being able to, make friends or talk to that girl you like, but also to just be able to, you never know where an opportunity will come from. And your ability to hold a conversation, to be charismatic, to ask the right questions could be the difference between you getting that opportunity and losing it, right? And so bear that in mind that this is an extremely important skill that I believe everyone should possess. Whether you are an introvert or an extrovert, this is a skill that you have to develop because it is important for life to know how to talk to people, right? It is an important life skill. So I think we need to put more emphasis on this in general, right? The ability to hold a conversation and to talk to people is extremely important. And it goes beyond just making friendships. Thank you for watching. I hope you have a great day.